Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch, so let's get into this.
Did you have app development in your background before you started doing it?
I did not. So, are we live by the way?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I went to, I'll just give you a background, I guess, real quick. So, I used to live here in San Diego, and then my family and I moved to Florida my 8th grade year. So
what took your family to Florida?
My dad's semi-retired. He was a physician, and, go retire in Florida. I think that was the mentality, and hey, let's move the family out there. But we're all back here since. So I spent 8th grade, high school, college in Florida, and made a lot of great friends. One of my best friends now, technology whiz, this guy. And
so that wasn't your background?
That was not my background, no. With the app production and stuff, I was more the business side of things. And he built the application. And then that's kind of the background about that. Well, I've known him since, again, 8th grade we met. And we stayed great friends since high school, college, obviously till this day. And now he works at Mark 43 as well. So.
Now, you said your dad was a physician. Any other law enforcement in your family?
I had an uncle who was Secret Service, and that's it. He's retired since, but I never grew up like wanting to be a cop, be a firefighter, outside of being maybe a small kid, right? You're
right.
Playing around. But yeah, I went to college again with a finance degree in mind, and I graduated with finance, and then I wanted to get into, I thought at the time, investment banking. And I graduated in 2008, which is not the best time to graduate with a finance degree. But I was working for, at the time, the Siemens Corporation as a financial controller. So Siemens is like the General Electric of Europe. They're big out here as well. And again, I had a pretty good job offer from that, and I did really well during my internship. And it was nice because I was getting paid actually pretty good money for being a college senior. And so they had offered me a job, and it was 2008, and I just had this feeling of, I'm 21 years old. Am I going to sit behind a desk right now at 21, crunch these numbers for the rest of my life?
Sounds really exciting.
Exactly. And I did have a few more offers from some financial institutions, like a Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch. Same thing though. I thought, I'm 21. And some of my other friends were going out, they were traveling. Yeah, we just spent 4 years in college. And I didn't really want to do that. I kind of wanted to start something. So I knew I didn't want to do that route. I didn't want to take a year or two off. And then something came over me where I wanted to give back to the community in some facet. And I almost went in the military, actually. And it's funny to say this, but the only reason I didn't go in the military is I didn't want to be told where to go. So I knew I wanted to eventually go back out to San Diego. And I thought, I'll just be a cop in San Diego.
Was there a single catalyst event that kind of caused that change in thought process?
Not really. I think I just wanted to challenge myself. Again, I told you I had an uncle in the Secret Service, and I remember I went up there to the training facility before going to the police academy. And I had shot a few guns before then, but I actually got some really great training from him. And, we even did like a little bit of defensive tactics and things like that. I thought, that's pretty cool. And that was 2008 when I graduated, and I got into the July 2008 Academy in San Diego. So it was a real quick trip, came out here.
How many agencies did you test with?
Just San Diego, that's it. And I knew that the whole process could take anywhere from 6 months to a year, maybe longer. So I come out, I do the testing, and I did really well. And I remember being in line there, and I was an out-of-state guy, so that helped. They had like a separate line for people out of state. They wanted to push them through.
Easier to get to the front of the line.
Oh yeah, there was only maybe 10 to 15 guys and girls there. And the rest of the line was all local, and it was like 250 strong wrapped around the building. So they run me through, and I was like number 2 or 3. And so did the obstacle course, went down to the PIQ, and a background investigator came over to me and said, so like, what's your story? What's going on? So I said, I'm in Florida. I want to come back out here. And she goes, well, we'll put you through the hiring process, the whole thing in like 1.5, 2 weeks. And I said, wow. Usually takes like 6 months to a year.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, but she said, we're hiring like crazy out of state. You have your degree. I think this would be great. So because my dad was a physician, he had actually fixed up a few cops who came to the hospital before, and he had established a couple of relationships with some, I think at the time they were lieutenants and maybe a sergeant or two. And I met up with them, and they just kind of gave me the rundown. Because you always hear, hey, this is what you're going to make and this and that. But I wanted like the down and dirty, especially being finance. I was like,
yeah, be honest.
How much do I have to make? Put away this and that. And again, I liked what I was hearing. And at the same time, it was a way for me to, again, give back to the community, I thought. And I still think to this day. It's great. It's a great profession. And it happened real fast. Again, I came back out to Florida, basically grabbed my stuff, and moved cross country, did the academy again in July 2008. Again, it was a quick 1.5, 2 months. Lived out here by myself. Academy is 6 months, and obviously the phase training is 4 months. And then I was 22 years old with a badge and a gun, and they said, go forth and conquer.
Now, with a college degree underneath your belt when you came in, was there ever the thought of going the federal side, like FBI? Because I can imagine with an economics degree, and they would have.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely met with the FBI down here. We actually had one individual that left San Diego PD to go to the FBI. We had another one that went to Secret Service, and obviously my uncle, So I had thought about that, but same thing. It was, I really liked where I lived, and you would have to be told where to go.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't be able to do that for a couple of years, but I don't know. I just kind of wanted to create my own path here in San Diego. And the one thing for me, looking back with, again, the 12.5 years I did, I got so blessed with supervisors and squads. I mean, it was amazing. You always hear horror stories, right? You go to a different squad, this and that. You have a new guy coming in as a supervisor. And I never had that. And I had a lot of great mentors. And, worked a lot of overtime. But I was kind of able to make my own schedule up. And I got like pretty comfortable with things. It was kind of like, police work's not routine, but you can make it routine, right? You do what you need to do, and you work we do 4 to 10s, right? And then I had 3 days off, and I'm sitting around like, man, I got 3 days off. I can go make some more money overtime, stuff like this. I don't know, maybe like the finance in me was always like kind of going around. I don't know. But yeah. So
wanting to make money and going into law enforcement don't
I know, right?
go together.
But I was having fun. And that's the thing. It's like you always hear like money's not everything. Like we both know tons of rich people who are miserable.
Right.
But I just wanted to be comfortable, and I wanted to like what I did. And I found that with police. Yeah.
When did the idea start percolating to design an app?
Okay, so I was about 9 years on. I went back, got my master's degree in leadership and management. I went through National University. I went through this expedited program. I did it in 13 months. And same thing, I just wanted to like get in, get it over with, and be done. I remember I was working graveyards too. But same thing, I had a supervisor at the time who I worked in an area at the time that was not very busy overnight. And he said, listen, handle your calls, do your stuff, write your papers on your downtime. Awesome. Very supportive of that. Just an example, again, how I was blessed with the supervisor. But
alternate question then, going back to get your master's degree, were you starting to look towards the avenue of leadership?
Yeah. So actually before I left the PD, I was in the promotional process. But outside of that, though, I really didn't have the desire to promote yet, because I still wanted to, I didn't really know if I wanted to make law enforcement my career for 30, 35 years. And I commend the men and women who do that. That's amazing. But again, I just didn't know if this was something I was going to do. I was at the time, I was 31, 32, and I had 10 years on. So I'm like, okay, I got vested at 10. Cool. A little bit of a milestone. Am I going to do this for another 20? And when I went back and got my master's, I said, okay, I'm a cop, got a finance degree, master's degree. I can go the promotional route. But I always had this I had done this education. I never really got to apply it, I guess. And I could have, I guess, if you move on and become like some type of leadership role in the department. But I don't know, I just want to keep my options open. So I started interviewing at a few financial firms, never thinking that I was actually even going to get a look. But I actually went on a trip with my wife to New York because I had some interviews there at some of these investment banking firms. And I remember sitting in one of the interviews, and I had this panel in front of me, and here I am, like, what am I doing here? I'm on the umpteenth floor of some high rise, and this guy sitting across from me goes, "Do you have any cool police stories?" And I said, "I do, but are we going to talk about the job?" And like we hit it off really well, and it never came into fruition, and I'm thankful now that it didn't. But I mean, I probably interviewed. And when I say like interviews, I mean even just talking to people to hear. You learn more about what you don't want to do, right? Sometimes. I probably talked to 50 to 100 people.
The interview process in New York, those panels.
Yeah.
Compare them to what it was like doing a police interview.
Everything was so easy in a sense of because we deal with such stress. It was kind of like I felt like I was in the driver's seat. There's a little bit of the nerves though, because like you're getting into possibly a new field. We can talk about that in a second, but sitting across from people, you talk to people all the time when you're a police officer. I think that's something that is really undervalued with guys and girls who are going to leave or thinking about leaving. Is like there's a lot of great characteristics that you have as a law enforcement professional, and I got to see that firsthand. I think.
I would imagine that command presence is definitely something. Not to undermine the civilian sector, but law enforcement and military definitely bring a command presence to any situation that they're in. So you're definitely probably going to be in an environment where I'll loosely use, you could almost be intimidating to bunch of finance people.
Sure. I never really got that sense though, but I can imagine, yes, you could. I think maybe it's like check your ego at the door a little bit, right?
Right.
And but yeah, so we went out there and again, I had a lot of great interviews and talked to a lot of great people.
Did you end up getting a job offer?
I got one, and it was like a polite decline. The other ones too were like having to move there to New York. Not to knock New York, but my wife's a SoCal girl as well, and it's like we're both from here, so I don't know. We just like where we live, and again, I found out more about what I didn't want to do as well.
But you at least rolled the dice and gave it a shot.
Yeah, and I think, for anybody listening or watching, it's you just gotta, the hardest thing to do, my parents always told me this, the hardest thing to do is to start something. There's a million ways or a million reasons to talk yourself out of something. It is. And what do you have to lose? I always tried to operate too with a safety net. I said, okay, if this didn't work out, I have a great profession right now. But I just want to put the feelers out there. And again, I probably talked about 50, probably about 75 people. Again, I said 50 to 100, but about 75 people. And whether or not that's a mixture of interviews or, again, somebody that knows somebody in a different field. Because you can get really, again, if you go public safety, you're only going to be in public safety, which is fine. But I remember guys coming up to me and they said, "Oh, you have your degrees. Should I go get my degree in criminal justice?" And I say, well, depends. Do you want to stay criminal justice, or do you kind of want to make yourself like, if you're sitting across the table, because you're just a piece of paper at the time. So they're going to look at you and go, especially now when you apply online and things, I think like there's probably some system where they just shoot you to the side and you don't even have business on there. But I would tell them, no, go do something else. Like, I kicked myself that I didn't do history. I love history. And people go, well, history degree. But yeah, but it's interesting. And it's something that you can talk about. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting across the table from somebody. You never know. This person might have their history degree or something. But you're going to be talking public safety, and they're going to be like, how does that apply here?
Criminal justice degrees are definitely one of those. If you're staying in the criminal justice field, it's the way to check a box to have the degree.
Yeah.
But it's a very limited. You could almost equate it to somebody who goes to get a degree in 14th century poetry.
Right.
It's going to have a very small, limited use set outside of that environment.
Right. So yeah, I mean, again, it was one of my things. I just wanted to always keep my options open. I was even hesitant about getting my master's in leadership management because I was like, it's kind of businessy. I already have a bachelor's business. Should I go do something else like history? But then I'm like, I don't know. Let's just do this. And this also program was only 13 months, so I didn't want to spend 2.5 years or more trying to get like some history master's where it's I don't even know if I met like the prereqs for it. Who knows? Go all the way back.
So you went through the process down the avenue of going to the financial sector.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't end up happening.
Yeah.
Stayed in law enforcement, obviously, a few more years.
Yeah.
Again,
yeah.
What was the next avenue or pathway out?
Yeah. So again, it sounds weird because I still had a really good time being a cop. I don't miss like the day-to-day stuff, but I do miss the camaraderie and who you're around, and that's great. And again, you learn so much as a cop. I mean, right after I actually pretty much got vested, right around year 10, a little after that, my buddy who I was talking about before came out here with his wife, did like an LA trip and stuff. And my wife and I met up with them in LA, and
not a police officer.
Very successful in the tech world, but he was also like consulting at the time. And I said, hey, I got this idea for an app. You want to build it? And because I could have gone the route and tried to find somebody and pay them and this and that. And I was kind of taking a shot with my friend and saying, and in like a polite way, he kind of blew me off and said, yeah, I don't have time for that. I said, that's fine. I get it. And then, we proceeded to have a nice time with him in LA. And then 2 weeks later, he called me and he says, well, hey, you know that app idea you had? I said, yeah. He goes, there's nothing really out there like it. I said, yeah, that's why I asked you. And I don't expect him to know that because, again, he's not a police officer. And he goes, well, let's see what we can do. Take a shot. And then I think like 2 weeks after that, he had like this really cool beta-looking thing.
Now, what was the specific niche that you wanted to accomplish in that app?
So, for those of you listening, you know that traffic collisions are not the sexiest part of police work, right?
don't tell that to a motor.
Exactly. But, for a patrol officer, right, it can, especially down here in San Diego, I think we do upwards at the time, 15,000 documented crashes a year. It's a lot. And, a lot of agencies are understaffed. And I remember, especially, it always seemed to happen on a Friday, right? I had multiple traffic accident reports that I had to do. And I had all my sheets of paperwork out there. And I said, man, it's my Friday. The radio's going off. You're like trying to be picky and choosy. Should I go to this? Is someone else going to answer up on that? And I hadn't even touched my paperwork yet. And I said, wow, that'd be really cool if I could have worked on this during my patrol shift or something, like between breaks, whatever. I mean, I often rode with a buddy, so he could drive around and I could do this on the app or something. And ironically, actually, that day, I remember vividly, I had this paperwork out, and my buddy who ended up building the application texted me and like called me or something. I remember looking at the phone and like, man, what if I just put these papers on this phone? And that's kind of how that happened. And so yeah, the application itself is it's mobile, it's cross-platform, cross-device. So the idea was for officers to show up on scene, start clicking, scanning driver's licenses, taking photos of license plates, uploading all that information up, and basically filling out those forms, those state forms. And then they could go back on their desktop and polish off their narrative, whatever they needed to do. So that was the idea.
From inception planning to application, how long did it take?
Oh, probably about 2 years. But I was working full-time, more than full-time, because I was doing a lot of overtime. My buddy was also working, again, as a consultant for multiple firms. So it was like a kind of like a side hobby for us. And then when we started getting this beta testing out there, we saw that how much officers were liking it. We kind of looked at it and like, all right, there's something here. Like we need to be a little bit more aggressive maybe in actually forming a company and seeing what we can do. So that whole process for me that was really the first time that I actually applied, I guess, my education to something. And I liked it. I liked figuring out that process out.
When you were moving forward with it, was there any consultation with your agency in getting approval to do it, or was that even?
Yeah, I talked to them. You don't shit where you eat. So at the same time, like I didn't do anything on company time, department time, nothing like that. I was very strict about that. And I really didn't want anybody to know, actually. And, I had officers that I knew use it, but off duty on the side just to get their feedback. But yeah, I had filled out like an outside request, what is that? Outside employment request form, things like that. So I got all that approved.
Yeah, silly question. Was your agency the first agency to start deploying it once it was a public, unavailable product?
No.
Did they end up adopting it at any point?
Not yet, because I've only been with Mark 43 now for about 15 months. And when we first came over, we had to do some work for Mark 43's customers on the East Coast. So now we're getting back into California.
And we'll work our way there to you selling your company. So the process, you have the designing of an app, and then you need to make it available, kind of like a podcast.
Yeah.
What's the process to make an app available to the public?
Yeah. Well, for us, it was building a niche app in already a niche industry, right? You don't expect to get someone down the street and say, like, hey, can you try this collision reporting application for police officers? They're like, screw you, whatever. So again, it was a lot of testing. It was a lot of, and for me, it was a total learning experience because I'm not tech savvy. I'm way more now than I used to be, but I wasn't at the time at all. I relied heavily on my business partner, and we had to again build this beta, get people using it again off duty and all that, and just getting the feedback, and then just making these adjustments. In the way that it was built, it was really easy to make the adjustments for him. I say easy, air quotes, right? He's probably good. There's nothing easy about it. But again, we had to make this decision are we going to build this business and we're going to run with it, or are we going to build it and potentially sell it? And again, it's like I said, an industry where you have some heavy hitters in that industry. There's only so many. It was going to be a hard one to kind of break into. And not to get like too technical with it, but part of this whole thing was, the lifeblood of police work is records management systems and computer-aided dispatch, the CAD. And trying to get integrated with one of those, I think was crucial for the application, which we did.
Well, and the problem is that you could have 10 agencies adjacent to each other and they all run different CAD systems.
Exactly.
So getting that connectivity across multiple platforms just adds to the problem.
Yeah, and we had to look at it. How much money did we want to put into this thing? And how much of the problem did we want to solve? Or could we give it to somebody to help solve this? And that's what we chose to do. But again, the learning process from it was like even developing the business contracts, like the articles of incorporation for the business, and getting the attorneys on it and looking at the patent stuff. And, that was just a whirlwind for me. And it was fun, though, because when I would go, work my shift at the police department, this is what I was doing off duty. And it was kind of giving me like a new lifeblood a little bit. Like, okay, this is something that I'm working towards and it's fun. There was definitely some like hard times in the sense of this is just like, hey, this is not working, or it's just maybe a little bit too stressed, something like that. But yeah,
because the entire time both you and your partner were doing this on the side. So you're trying to squeeze the hours in the day to try to get this app going.
And you got to look at it that, again, we have the 4 10-hour shifts we do. And then, okay, I could go work another 10-hour shift for overtime and make, good money. Or I could devote that day to the application. Or I'm working, oftentimes I worked all my days off just because it was there. It's like, okay, I'll eat up the overtime. But you just kind of have to make those choices on a week-by-week basis.
For somebody who's potentially thinking about designing an app, and obviously,
don't do it.
Okay. Real simple, we're done.
No.
The developing the app, it has to be the first inception, because you could have the idea, but until you start putting it in place, there's nothing there. So I can see you're developing the app, but at what point do you pivot and go, okay, now that we're building this app, we need to build a business? Or did you get it all done and then go, okay, let's build a business?
Well, I think one thing was the application. We wanted to make sure that we were protected as far as any type of intellectual property. So that kind of led to something where we did file for a patent, because we do have some things in there. So we needed basically a business entity to be able to do some of this stuff.
What's the process like for applying for a patent?
It's pretty much impossible to get a patent on software these days. But if you find like a little something in there that can latch onto that, you just take it and run with it. So that process in itself is, I mean, we hired a patent attorney.
So it's not something you can do yourself?
No.
Or not recommended?
I would not recommend it at all. I mean, the paperwork behind that itself was probably 200 something pages, maybe. I don't know.
Definitely get somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and it has to be worded a certain way. I mean, there's a reason there's patent attorneys. Let's put it that way. So again, that was one of those things that I made, like, a friend of a friend, nice connection there, and he took it and run with it, and somebody that you trust, and you kind of don't. You got to learn, like, it's kind of like your baby, right? But then you got to learn to be like, okay, you take good care of it, and that's just live and learn. I mean, we definitely had some attorneys along the way too with the business that they're really great, I think, people. I remember one specific one where we were just writing up the actual articles of incorporation for the company, and there was something in there about wheelchairs, and my buddy and I are like, did he just copy and paste this from something else? And he did. And it's like overlooked, so you kind of like check the attorney's work in that case and stuff. And it was just funny. We talk about it now, like, yeah, our application does stuff with wheelchairs.
Yeah, just because you're using the services of an attorney doesn't mean that you shouldn't be, going over the contracts or the paperwork with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, and that's, if you're working those shifts and you come home at night and you're like, I gotta look over this document, and again, you put all that aside and you get it done just because this is what you're passionate about at the time. So, I guess I don't know, it was a lot of work, but it happened real fast too. So it actually went by pretty quick.
Looking back on it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, I've only been now 15 months with the new company. And and maybe too, like the police work was a little bit of a distraction too, which is good. It's tough to say that, but people are really glad.
Overall, did the platform or did the application ever go live natively to where it was available to people before you ever sold your company?
No, not officially. No, we had again some departments testing it out for us on a pilot basis, and that's when we were like, oh, okay, there's something here. Like it was strictly for us to get information about how to make it better. There was no monetary exchange. It was a pilot. Here you go. Let me know if you like it. Here's my background. Am I barking up the wrong tree? If you want to tell me to go pound sand, tell me to go pound sand. But we didn't get that. We actually got the opposite. Like, hey, you're on to something. And so we ended up basically going to like an expo up in Long Beach, and we met some good RMS and CAD vendors, and that's kind of where the conversation started.
So the offers to buy your company actually came before you actually launched the application.
Yeah. And we had some offers, and we said no, and we obviously said yes to one, and there you go.
So you sold it to Mark 43.
Yep.
What's Mark 43 about?
Yeah, so we do computer-aided dispatch and records management systems. The amazing thing about Mark 43 is it's cloud native, so it's pretty rare for something like that. Again, being around old clunky systems that you and I have been around, right? All that's on-prem, meaning that you got to have these big servers and you got to have all this hardware associated with running these systems. And you don't need that with Mark 43. And I love what they've been doing. They've been, again, I think, shaking up the industry in a very positive way. And we're excited to add this application to their platform.
So for anybody who's kind of following along, you didn't just sell your application. You actually got brought on to their company.
Yeah.
Was that something you wanted, or they just happened to offer it?
We met them in New York, and we had that discussion. And yeah, that's actually something I wanted. I wouldn't say I went there thinking that, but I think we had really good discussions, and I kind of saw it leaning that way. And I think there's a lot of value in bringing somebody who has prior law enforcement experience into that industry. I've sat in on demos when I was with the force of people trying to pitch me, this is the latest, greatest thing, you're really going to like it. And you kind of turn around and you say, well, what did you do to make me think that? Like, are you just, not to knock those people in the industry, but do you have any prior law enforcement experience? Because otherwise you're just telling me I need something, but do you think that I need it? So.
Was it hard for you to make the decision to walk away from law enforcement?
No. Again, I miss the camaraderie, but the day-to-day, no, because I never really saw myself doing it for X amount of years more. But if I did, I would be happy with it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just, there was an opportunity there, and I thought a great opportunity. And, the application is kind of like your baby, right? So you wanted to watch it grow. And I got the best, I guess, of both worlds there. So I got to watch it grow, and got hired on as on the basically the growth team, business development executive is my title. But I get to work a lot with the product team, and I get to work a lot with sales. And, I get to be in these demonstrations with what am I trying to say? Like the captains and the higher ups there, and the chiefs.
So you're still interacting on the regular with law enforcement.
Yeah, and that's like my favorite part of this job is it's kind of hard being on site during the pandemic, but when you can get on site with these agencies and you can talk to them and they find out your background, you really just start talking about other stuff actually, and that's really cool when you make that connection and there's that trust there.
Was Mark 43 started by law enforcement?
No. So they were started by 3 Harvard grads. Well, they were students at the time in the engineering school. And they're basically tasked to solve a problem. And I think that some of the co-founders had law enforcement in their family, but they basically found this gap in the information out there, and they wanted to try and make it better. And that's kind of how it started. Not to get too into how they started, but
if somebody's not designing an app but wanted to go work for a company like Mark 43, what kind of skill set would they need to bring to the table?
Well, yeah, I think since I've been there, I've definitely got reached out to by whether it's people that I know or whether or not it's people I went actually through like maybe the business school with and stuff. I think they're trying to look for like that next thing in regards to. Are you talking more about like law enforcement in general? Are you talking more?
No, like somebody's looking to make a transition.
Okay.
They see there are other companies.
And I guess I say this because like I don't want to like tell people not to be law enforcement professionals, right? Because again, this is still a great career. I just think that we definitely look for people who are good at interacting with, like command staff is great. I think doing demonstrations of these products that we have, and you have that past experience, is crucial because you're in it, and not a civilian can't say, yeah, I went to this 211, which is robbery, and I was able to pull this up real quick and this and that, and like actually show how the flow goes. But a police officer can, right? You can say like, this is how we check for warrants, and this is how we did X, Y, and Z, and you can show that to these departments.
So having that knowledge base when you're doing a demonstration to an agency is definitely a plus, because it's simply like reading a script and it says, and in this box it refers to a license plate, want and warrant check. And if you don't know what that means,
right,
not being able to make the connection.
And if you can like say your 10 codes, for instance, when you're talking to somebody, like it's sounds funny to us, but that's like a positive because they go, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. The thing about the industry itself is, compared to law enforcement, it is kind of like slow moving because we're so used to handling a call, moving on to the next one, handling a call, moving to the next one. This one, you have like a lot of processes you have to go, like, for instance, RFP, request for proposal. Like, these cities, they push these things out, and you got to, like, it's basically like their wish list, right? And they send it to you, and you kind of say, okay, we can do X, Y, and Z. Let's schedule a demo. It might not be for X amount of months later, almost a year later, but you still have to, like, make these relationships because you never know when the next, like, cycle will come up for them to be able to purchase your product. And again, you just kind of show it along the way, and hey, remember me? Like, I have this crash product. You guys looking for a crash product? Nah, not right now, but maybe like in 6 months. You never know. We're here if you need it, type thing.
An odd question. So you joked earlier about if somebody wants to design an app, like, don't do it. Hindsight being 2020, if you could go back and do it again, would you still go down this path?
I would. There's things I would do differently, and that's more like business related. Like, but you have to talk to certain people to, again, find out what not to do.
What would you do differently?
I think looking at it, if I knew how much it was to do it, I would probably, like, financially, like, find other ways to, like, I don't want to get too in details, but I would do something different than what I did. We did have, like, an angel investor that we brought in, and he was great. So I don't know, maybe I would, like, ask around a little more, try to get more perspective on things, maybe bring a few more people in, maybe take some of the workload off. Just things like that.
Are there avenues for seeking out investors for this type of business venture?
There probably are, but I didn't go that traditional route. I just happened to know people who knew people, and that was it. I just, and I think I also too had, like, this set amount of money that I was willing to, like, push into this development. And if I reach that point, then it's like, hey, we can't do this.
Without going into specific details, mm-hmm. If somebody was thinking about going down this process, hey, I got this idea for an app,
yeah,
I want to develop it, what kind of money would they anticipate spending?
I would say they don't have any tech experience. Nothing.
Let's assume that they
don't have a friend.
They don't have a friend who knows how to code.
Oh, so man, I think it depends on the app, but I mean, you could. Spend,
what's a ballpark?
I mean, you could spend anywhere from $1 million at the least sometimes, depending on, like, what it takes. But I would say, to get, like, good developers. This is something that was really new to me. We actually built out, like, a skeleton crew of a potential company if we were going to build this out. And I think it was going to be like $140,000 just for one developer. So if you take that and multiply that by maybe 3 or 4, you're already at $500,000. And then you're hoping that, we're hoping you guys build this quick. So we have to keep paying you.
Because the one intangible that you per se can't measure is, I'm sure you and your partner didn't track the number of hours you worked on this. So those are the hidden costs, so to speak.
Sure. And again, it was like life-saving turn of events or whatever that he was able to do what he did. And again, I could have gone the route like we just talked about and hired people to do it, but there's that risk: am I going to hire these people and spend X amount of money and not come into fruition?
Was there ever a point with the app where it just seemed to kind of hit some hurdles where it didn't seem like it was going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's with everything, but we were pretty determined. So we definitely hit it, but I don't think to the point where we were like, hey, we're not going to do this. We were very fortunate that things kind of fell into place when they were supposed to fall into place. But I don't really remember a time where I was like, hey, man, we got to shut this down. But
you went to that one tech conference and ended up getting some connections, ultimately selling the company. But at that point in time, when you were about to release it, what was the avenue to make it available to everybody in your mind, or at least based on your business plan?
One, I wanted to get integrated with my business plan was, okay, this app we think it's great because we've been around it for so long. So I was a little hesitant, like, are other people still going to think it's great? Because again, it's your thing. You look at it with, your bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. But I really wanted to get it integrated in a bigger system. That was the path forward for me because I saw the benefits of, if you're a police officer and you go to a crash scene and you have your RMS system that you use, wouldn't that be great if you just scanned, P1's license and you're like, oh, this guy's already in our system. I can just pull the information over so I don't have to retype everything in. Like that was the path I saw. And obviously we were able to do that. So is that interesting? I mean, that was like the main thing for me was we need to get this absorbed and adopted by a bigger system, way bigger system. Because again, crash reporting itself is maybe 10% of an officer's job, maybe, depending on where you work. Some guys and girls don't even do it, right? I think CHP here does a lot of traffic reports for agencies.
So what I'm getting at is the plan wasn't simply on somebody's phone, go to the iTunes App Store and download your app. You were looking at more of selling it as a platform, as your company.
because again, you're not going to sell this to somebody walking down the street. You're going to sell this to a police agency, and with that comes a lot of security around it, right? So yeah, we didn't really expect. I mean, you can't get on it now. You can't go on the iTunes Store now, or Apple Store now, or Android Store. Because we built it in a way. Actually, we built it. It's called Progressive Web App Technology. So it's literally a browser, but it acts and feels just like an application you have on your cell phone. So again, like the agency purchases it, they have their specific secured browser there, and they just add it like on their home screen to their phone. So yeah,
but it's got to be integrated with their entire platform.
The RMS, the records management system, yeah. We have the ability to possibly do it as a standalone, but again, you kind of lose some of that being able to link the vehicle profiles and people profiles if you're not linked to an RMS. But you can still use it, and it functions, all that.
Did both you and your partner come over to Mark 43?
Yeah, he's one of our directors of product.
And where do you see your future going? Kind of staying in this?
Yeah, I mean, I love this role. I love the work-life balance. I get to travel a little bit here and there. Again, I really, now that the pandemic is over, or seems to be getting over, because when I got onboarded, that was right in the middle of it. And it was a really weird transition for me to be now at home, working remotely. And I don't, I'm not checking in and out of work, right? I go downstairs, I'm like, okay, I'm at my office, whatever.
Where's your company headquartered at?
In New York. And we have offices and other locations across the country. We actually have one in Australia as well.
About how big as far as employees wise?
I think we're right around a little over 400 mark now. And before the pandemic, we were at 250.
So actually grew.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're hiring like crazy.
And do you work with or know of other officers that are with your company?
From prior, we have probably about, I'd say 20 to 25 maybe prior law enforcement. So working for us.
Definitely somebody who might have an interest in this field. Yeah. Give your company a look.
Oh yeah. It's definitely a learning curve. It's sometimes like learning a new language because again, I wasn't tech savvy. I'm not saying I'm tech savvy now, but you got to learn a lot of acronyms and this and that. I had like a couple screens up, like talking to somebody on the Slack channel. I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm just tapping on the side. I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what it is. But yeah, it's kind of cool to go with. Again, I left the field of public safety in the patrol setting, but I'm still helping public safety, which is cool. I got real lucky.
So you're using your prior experience to benefit your interactions for your company.
Yeah.
What's been your experience making the transition from law enforcement to the corporate world?
Ooh, good question. Kind of touched on it a few of them, but going from, again, working a very highly driven radio call area, which I came from, you're going to have some downtime in the corporate world. And you got to just prioritize your time. Just nothing, and I think that's what law enforcement does really well already. So anybody looking to transition, that's a great skill that you have. But but the role that I'm in is also trying to set up like future pipeline, right? Like what's it look like for Q3 of 2022, and do you have customers out for that, or even further past that? So that's something that's definitely I've had to learn a little bit. I also think that the learning, again, the language, you work a lot with people who are very tech savvy. You work a lot with some engineers and trying to bridge that connection of this is my prior experience, what your prior experience is, and like where can we meet in the middle? That's why I said like I get to work with the product team a little bit. Like they'll shoot me a note and say like, hey, we use your experience. We want to throw an idea at you that we have that we're trying to build. As an officer in the car, do you like the way that this looks? If you're talking to the design team or something. And that's really cool to like have somebody ask you for that experience, and you're looking at them like, man, I can't do what you do, because it's amazing what technology is out there.
But being able to see the flip side, they don't understand what you used to do.
Right.
They've got a concept and an idea,
mm-hmm.
but they have no way to know about actual application.
Yeah. And sometimes, we'll just schedule a meeting and they'll ask me about my background and experience. And like, hey, what were you feeling like when you went to, let's say, a shooting scene? Like, what was going through your mind? What were you looking for on the screen? And it's cool to see them like take that because public safety software in general, historically has never had that, I think. And especially with, mobile devices now, I think the men and women coming out of the academy are expecting to have certain things on their phone already. And it's an interesting time to be a cop too, right? I only did 12 and a half years, but I saw a huge change in that 12 and a half years. And I remember asking a lot of people I worked with who had the 30 plus years on, how has this changed for you? And it's just like a laundry list. But to be able to, I think, use the technology that we have today to better the policing for, again, these men and women coming out of the academy, it's like, because it becomes an officer safety issue too. If you're out of your car and you're checking on somebody, and if you have coverage and all that, but if you're checking something on your phone real quick, instead of you going all the way back to the car, you're gonna have to like transport this guy and girl to be able to have all that stuff, and it's there, it's available, but it's trying to get over that hurdle of getting it to the officer, right? And that's a whole nother process going through the city and budgets and things like that. But again, the stuff is out there. And for me, at a department where we have good technology, and I get it now being on this side of things, like why it takes a long time to get certain things done. I get that. There's some things that are coming down the pipe, I think, that are pretty cool that I wish I would have had for sure.
Well, you bring up a great point is for somebody thinking about potentially making this transition, you could think of it in a small world perspective and say, oh, it's just tech, it's just computers and applications. But truly, like you hit the nail on the head, information equals officer safety. And if you can develop or be part of a company that develops the ability to get officers information quicker and in a more safer environment, then you are still having a direct impact on the lives of every law enforcement officer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any other closing advice for somebody looking to make this change?
Again, I kind of started out with, Ian, the hardest thing to do is just to start something. And I'm always a big fan of operating with a safety net, if you can. Just like put it out there. And if you got an idea, run with it. And if it doesn't work out, okay, you still have a great career. I get asked that all the time, like, are you so glad to be out of police? Like, they see what's going on, not to get political or anything like that. But I am, but I'm also not. Like, it helped me to where I am today. And I really, really value that. I mean, going back when I was 22 and had a badge and a gun, I remember going to like my first domestic violence call, and they've been married 30 plus years. And the guy's looking at me like,
what am I going to tell you?
Yeah, we've all been there. And that's like something that still registers and always will register with me, because you learn so much life experience but just don't be tied down, I think, into law enforcement. If you are wanting to go get your degree, great. It's up to you, but have like another interest. Have
a fallback option.
Yeah, if you're looking to potentially get out, that's all. And it sounds weird to say get out, but we know what we mean by that. But yeah, have a fallback option. Have a few. I'm trying to think if I ever interviewed at something like totally random. I think somebody like interviewed me for like a marketing position one time. I was like, I don't know. It was like random. I was like a friend of a friend. I don't know. Yeah, again, I happen to have an interest in technology, which led me to where I'm at today. I just kind of ran with it. And again, if it didn't work out, I still had a great career. Yeah.
If somebody out there has an interest in technology, is it okay if they reach out to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
LinkedIn, the best way?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out, Clint Wansa at Gmail. There you go.
I'll put both your LinkedIn
connection
and your Gmail in the show notes.
Or even my Mark 43 email, clint.wansa at mark43.com. Again, we're hiring too. We really value, again, the prior law enforcement experience because we love law enforcement. That's what we do. We support the technology that supports all you. So
what ratio of your jobs allow people to work remotely?
You can pretty much be remote.
So it's definitely there.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a job that necessarily you don't want to relocate, or you're in a position where you want to work from home.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the position as well. I mean, if you want to do like a sales position, which can get a little hard, I think, too, for prior law enforcement because like you're gonna have a quota. Things and I've heard this before from people at the company that they're like, yeah, cops don't really like quotas in the sense of like, except you're a ticket writer. Yeah.
There's no quotas.
Yeah, exactly. So it just depends on the role. Again, if you're going to be some type of sales role, you're going to be traveling a little bit, so you're pretty much remote. You don't have an actual office that you can go to. You can go if you're close by, sure. If you're more on the implementations or engineering side, that's really remote as well. I think every single position is pretty much can be remote. And I think that's a lot of the trend that we're seeing too in just the industry as well.
Right.
This pandemic showed us that we can do a lot from home. So, businesses too are like, well, we don't need to have an office open. Right?
Save us money.
Yeah, we don't need to pay the rent, doing all that stuff.
Well, I appreciate your time.
No, thank you. It's great what you're doing.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.